Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Welcome to part 2 of Build a Full Stack Forum with Node, Express, Postgres, Vuex, and Bootstrap. Welcome to the show. This is a continuation of a thing that I started to build during an 8-hour live stream that I did. Actually didn't get very far during the 8-hour live stream, but I do... Whoa. I think everything's okay. I do have a Trello board with tasks that I'm working on. And tonight I'm just going to work on a few more features and just keep working on it. I'll show you what we have so far, but the idea is we're just building a forum that will have various categories. You can create topics in a given category, and then you can reply to a given topic. Right now we have login with Google. So we can click the login with Google button. It'll take us to like an Oauth screen. We click our account, and then it redirects us back to the forum, and we're actually logged in. One thing that also happens is, as the first user to ever log into the forum, you are made the admin. So that way you have admin privileges like creating categories or like deleting messages and moderating, that kind of thing. And hello, Andreas. Hello, my username is Ryder. Tycho. Welcome to the stream. Andreas is asking, what happened to the pull request you did on stream for Vue or Vuex, something related to the Vue docs? James is on the bus and it's his first live stream. Awesome. Welcome. I didn't make some pull requests for Vue docs. I did make a pull request to Vuex, which is a Vue.js component library. Loading. There it is. But there were some issues with just like getting it to run locally so that I could contribute to it, and I did get some pull requests accepted here. Actually, I think if we look on contributors, will you see my face? Their site's loading really slow, but I guess it's not their site. It's actually GitHub that's loading slow. Could be my internet too. I think my name will pop up on this page. All right, we'll let that load. But this is basically where we are with the forum so far. We can log in as an admin, we get redirected, but that's about it. In the description below, I have links to the code that I'm working on, and the client and server are in one repo, and the database code for migrating the Postgres database are in this a separate repo. And then we also have our entity relationship diagram that we designed. We've only implemented part of it so far. So that's pretty much it. Luke is asking, did I get all my cleaning done? I got a good amount done. I'm happy with what I got done. I didn't finish it, but I put a dent in it, which is more than I can say for the past few nights when I actually have been trying to clean. So it's going well. But so I also linked to this Trello board in the description. This is the one we were working on. As a forum owner, on first login, I should be made the administrator. Let's just do a quick tour of the code before I start writing code. Cool. So front end is Vue.js, and I believe we're just using Bootstrap. Backend is Node, and what happens is we do have a Google Oauth. Let me make it sure that you can see this. And yeah, so we're doing login with Google. And when the user logs in, we do a check. We first look in the database to see if there are any admins. If there are not, we make this user that's logging in an admin. If you've ever set up a forum from scratch, this is typically something you'll see that happens. You essentially, because you're the first user, you are the admin. So now that our first user has role ID 3, they'll have admin access, and we can start to create routes that only an admin will be able to write data against. Hello, Andy. Welcome to the stream. So that's for logging in. If you look at our client side, we do have just like that basic home landing page, which I did show. And then we have a view, which basically is what the user gets redirected to whenever the Oauth flow is happening. So they get redirected here. The token then gets brought in, and we do have a store, I believe. and we have login, which will set the token in local storage. It's great. And redirect to the forum page. And if we look at our router, we actually don't have a forum page yet, but we're working on that. So let's get started. So on the Trello board, I have, as a forum owner on first login, I should be made the administrator. This is done, so I'm going to move it into done. Let's just get started working on this next thing. It's going to involve a bit, but let's do it. So as an administrator, I want to create a new category. So we'll just make like a quick checklist of things that we need. We're going to need, for one, a category table in the database. We're then going to need an API route to create a category. We want to only allow if admin. We will then need a like an admin page on client to add categories. And that's about it. Cool. Luke is asking if there is an official material design extension for Vue. I don't know about official, but Vuetify is probably the most full-featured material design component library for Vue.js. There are a couple others out there, but Vuetify just has tons of components. I'm not actually using Vuetify on this app, but this is like the go-to. Daniel says, I'm on the left this time. I am, because I'm actually in a new room. My other room, I've been cleaning and moving stuff around. Vuetify, yeah. So check it out. It's vuetifyjs.com. All right. Oh yes, and I made it on the Vuex contributors. I have 3 commits and 3 accepted pull requests, I think. Yeah. Cool. All right, so let's do this. First thing is I'm going to create the database, create the table on the database. So if we open this up, you'll see so far we have our user table, which is where the users are being stored, obviously. We have the role table, which has all the various roles that a user can have. And then we added a column to users called role ID. So any given user can have one specific role ID. And then we also forgot image URL, so we added that onto the table. So right now we only have 2 tables, users and roles. And then we did seed the roles table with user, moderator, and administrator. Those are 3 types of users. But if we look at our ERD, let's open this up. The one we want to create now is category. This one here. So we have these 2 tables. Let's create the category table. So here in the forum DB directory, I'm using connects. So we're going to do connects migrate make, and we want to create the category table. So that created, make sure you can see this. This migration file right here, and this is where we'll be able to actually describe the table. So very similar to how we did it with users, so I'm just going to copy this, but then we'll customize it. So the table that we're creating is category. It is going to have an auto-incrementing ID. Let's take a look at our image. It also needs a title that is of type text. So we'll do table.text for title. Take a quick stretch. Actually got a Kinder Egg today. I might do a Kinder Egg unboxing on stream. Not now though, we're coding. Okay, so we have a title column that is of type text. We also need a description column that is of type, text that is called description. And then we also need image URL. Okay, let's say title and description are required. So I'm going to make these not nullable. Basically, we cannot insert them into the database unless they have a title and they have a description. And then image URL can be null because maybe you create a category that doesn't have an image. That's fine with me. And I think that's it. So we have the migration. Let's run it. Well, we also need down. The opposite of creating a table is dropping a table. So in the down, you do the opposite. Drop table category. And now let's run our migration, which will create that table. So we'll do connects migrate latest. There we go. So it created the category table. If we drop down into pSQL, connect to our community forum database, not that. There you go. Describe tables. Cool. So we have our users table, our role table, and we just created the category table. So if we describe the category table, it has an ID, it has a title, which is not null, a description, which is not null, and an image URL, which is text, which can be null, and then ID is our primary key. So this is the table in SQL that we just described using connects. Cool. So we have the table there. Now we can start working on the API route that will actually add things to that table. So let's look at our checklist. We added it to the database. Now we need an API route to create a category, only allow if admin. We'll also eventually need an API route to get all categories. But let's work on this next one, an API route to create a category. So I'm going to close my DB code. We don't need that for now. And cool. Question from James. Best way to store user images you have found? Yeah, Amazon S3 is always a good choice. I've actually experimented with using Imager because they have like free uploads. I don't know if I would depend on that for like a production website, but for something like hobby, they have like an uploading API and it works pretty well. So there's that. There's also Firebase has their asset storage. I don't know what it's called. It's something like that, but very similar to S3. They have like an upload API and you can store your images there. But typically, if I am storing images, I'm using a service like that. I'm not like storing them in the database. I'm just storing their actual URL in the database. Okay, so let's go to the backend, and we're going to need to create some queries for categories. So we have these queries here for users. We're going to create a new queries file. Let's call this categories. And it's going to export an object. And we're going to do a very similar thing. So the thing we're using for validation is this library called Joy, and it allows us to essentially create an object schema where we can validate our incoming data. So we're going to do a very similar thing, but for category instead. And then DB is our actual connection to the database, and that's what we're bringing in as well. So inside of categories at the top, we're going to do something very similar. But now let's create this schema specifically for category. So if we look back at our image, title and description are required. So we'll do title, it is a string and it is required. Description, it is a string and it is required. And that's about it. Oh, that's extra. We can also, I believe, add on there image URL. And I believe by default with Joy, if you don't put required, then it makes it optional. But it will still allow some incoming data that has an image URL property on it. So that'll work. Yeah, so this is our basic schema for category. Great. And now we need a query to create a category. And we're going to accept the category to create. And then we're going to validate it. So let's see how we did that for here. Something like this. Okay, so we called it insert for user. We might also call it insert for category. But we're going to have some very similar code. might actually refactor it, but it's going to look like this. So we're going to be inserting a category into this table. And we want to validate the incoming category. So this is going to be the thing that the server receives, and we're going to use this schema to validate it. If there was no error, then we're going to grab the category table and insert the category and return everything that just got inserted and return essentially the category that just got inserted. Yeah. You'll notice this does pretty much exactly the same thing as the user's insert, but it's just talking to a different table. Because we're here, let's refactor it. So let's create like a common queries file. Let's just call this index.js. So it'll actually be just for common functions that we want to use for queries. And so this is the function that we want to make generic, so that we can call it, that way we can call it in multiple places. So let's call this insert into table and validate. So the thing we're going to get to insert into the table, it's not going to be category. We can make it generic. We'll just call this like item. So we'll rename this to item. And then we also want to pass in the schema that we're going to be using to validate. And we'll need the table name. So this becomes table name. That's about it. So this, we'll just export that function. Insert into table and validate. But we are going to need the DB in here, so we can just simply import that in, or sorry, require that in, and joy, because we're doing the validation. But now that we have this handy dandy function, we can use it in both places. So let's do that. So let's first do it in users. We'll say insert into table and validate is require. We'll just grab the index file. And now, instead of doing all this, we want to return, we need the table name, which is users. We need the item we're inserting, which is user. And we need the schema, which is schema. So now we can just do that. Beautiful. And now we can do the same thing with the other insert. So let's grab this method again, insert into table and validate. And then pretty much just do the same thing. So we're going to return insert into table and validate. The table name this time is category. The item is going to be category, and the schema is going to be schema. Morning, Sanjay. And Andreas is asking, is the table name category or categories, and does it matter? I named it category, so it doesn't. You can name it literally whatever you want. There are different opinions when it comes down to like database design, but the idea being that this table represents the category entity. There are going to be multiple categories in this table, but the description of the table itself is singular. So I actually like to name all of my tables singular. The only reason users is plural is because that's a reserved word. User is a reserved word in Postgres. So that's the only reason I made that plural, but everything else I'm going to make singular. And it's really just preference. You can name it whatever you want. Sanjay saying you should be on the right of the screen. Yes, I'm in a different room today, so things are switched up just a little bit. Let me know if I'm ever like in front of the code or anything like that. Okay, so that allows us to we have the database query that's going to insert a category, validate it, insert it, and then return it. So now we need an actual API route that will allow us to create a category. So in the server, let's create a new folder. Let's call this API. And in here, I'm going to create a file called categories. So this is where for me it's a little bit different. So the table is singular. The route is going to be plural. Okay. Yes. So categories, we're going to create an express router that right now just has one route for creating a category. So we're going to bring in express. We're going to create a router. And then we'll export that router. And we pretty much want one route on it right now. We want a post route to slash, because we're going to mount this whole router at categories. And so when you post to categories, we will insert it into the database. So we're going to need to bring in our categories queries. Go up one directory into the queries folder and grab the categories file. Cool. And so we're going to say categories.insert. We're going to pass in rec.body because that's going to be the thing that we're sending the server. And we'll do async await. We'll await this. So let's say this is an async function. And we're going to say category will be await that. And if this works, we're just going to res.json the category. Great. But one thing we do want to do is wrap this in a try catch. So that way, if for whatever reason there was an error in insert, like let's say they tried to send us bogus data, we'll actually respond with an error. So try to do this. And then if there was an error, we're just going to forward that error on to the error handler. So we're going to use next, and we'll just say next error. And let me double check my app.js. Do we have an error handler? We do. We created that in the 8-hour live stream. So what will happen here is a post request comes into the server with a body that will contain the information for creating a category. We'll attempt to insert that into the database. If all goes well, we'll just respond with it. If there was an error, we will forward on to the error handler. Cool. Let's try this out with Postman. So I'm going to open up Postman. And my server should have restarted. Yes, server's restarted. Oh, and so I created the router. I actually need to put it on our app. That's one thing I forgot to do. So in our app.js, I'm going to bring in this categories router and mount it. So we've got auth there. Let's call this categories. And actually, this is what I'll do. Bear with me. So in the API folder, I'm going to create a new file called index.js. This is going to be where I mount all of my API routes. So here we're going to create a router very similarly, but it's not really have any inserting into the database or anything. So this router represents the API, and in here is where I'm going to bring in categories. So I'm going to say categories is require that categories router file. So categories here exports a router. So we're now going to mount this router on this router. So we're going to say router.use / categories categories. So now when a request comes into this API router that has categories in the URL, it's going to go into that router. Cool. So we have this set up. Now let's bring this API router into app.js. Take a quick stretch. We'll bring it in right here. So let's say API is require API. And one thing about Node is if you do a require statement for a folder, it automatically looks for the thing called index.js. So this is going to be requiring in this router here. And so then in app.js, we have API. So now we're going to mount it. let's put it here. We'll say app.use. I typically like to prefix it like API/v1. And or is it v1/API/v1? Let's look up router versioning conventions. We'll say API versioning conventions. Cool. And a question from James in the chat: why separate like that? Mainly just to keep things clean, because I'm gonna have routes for creating categories, routes for creating topics, routes for creating comments, replies, messages. So instead of having everything all in one file, it's nice to separate it out like that. So when I'm working on one specific thing, I like know which file to go into. It's just been a while since I did this, so I forget. Is it like API/v1/ the thing that you want? Let's see. Actually, let's just look at like the GitHub API because they do it. API v3. No. I guess there's a way to call it, but with the v3. Why am I spacing on this? Introduction to API versioning best practices. N+1. And the idea behind this is like, what if my API changes? Like, what if I no longer have a create categories route or something like that? What I might do is keep this version 1 API around because people might be dependent on it, and then create new routes under /v2 and eventually deprecate v1 so no one can use it. But it's good to always version your APIs. Why is this so hard to find? Yeah, I'm gonna go with this. I don't know why this is so hard to find. API/v1/ yeah. I don't know. Some results are coming up for that. I'm thinking either it's like v1/API. I think it's API/v1. I have already spent way too much time on this. Yeah, let's go with that. Tycho votes for API v1. Me too. I don't know why I second guess myself. But here's what happens. We're saying app.use with /API/v1. So when a request comes into our server that begins with API/v1, it's going to go into this router here. Then if that URL ends with categories, so API/v1/categories, it's going to go into this router. Then if it was a post request on /categories, it's going to go into this route and the thing will happen. So now that we have that, let's try to test it with Postman. So remind me later. Go away. So we don't save. Are going to make a post request against localhost. I believe we're running on port 3000 /API/v1/categories. And we want a body. We'll make it JSON. I want to make sure that this fails. So if I send it bogus data, child title fails because title is required. Cool. So our validation is working. So let's give it a title. We're going to have the announcements category. Okay, so that's what API/v1 is what was what they say on Stack Overflow or what they use. Cool. I'm glad I went with that. Cool. So our validation is working. Child description fails because description is required. So I'm also going to add in a description. Latest, well, what should the description of the announcement topic be? Stay up to date on the latest announcements. I don't know. Let's Google it. So there are forums out there like Node BB is an open source one made with Node. Let's look at theirs. Announcements. Check here for announcements about Node BB. That seems like a decent description. Check here for announcements about I have to spell this right because I'm not going to enable editing until later on. Announcements. Check here for announcements about community. And I don't think I said it yet, but we are calling our forum community because we're a community here at Coding Garden. So let me make sure that I spelled announcements right. I think I did. Okay, good. So it has a description, a title, go! And it got created. So you'll notice that it came back with an ID, which means it was actually inserted into the database. And it's in there. So that's great. So that works. We can actually hit it with Postman. Let's make a quick route to get all categories, and then we'll work on the front end. So in our categories query, we'll say get all. And this is just going to return db with category dot select. So select star from the table called category. So that will get all of the rows in the categories table. And then we'll add a route in the categories router for get. So when you make, oh, good call, Andreas. These aren't protected yet. They are not. We are going to add protection. And James, this is actually another reason why I would separate my routes up like this, because now inside of here, it's really easy to like add protection to specific routers instead of having all of that in my main app.js. Good morning, John. Welcome to the stream. But yeah, I'll add the protection before we move to the client side. So when you do a GET request on slash, we are going to do a very similar thing, but we'll say categories will be, well, let's just call it all, will be categories dot get all. We're not going to pass in any parameters. And then we're going to respond with all of the categories. Why is this yelling at me? Oh, because I'm using await. So this needs to be async. Cool. So actually, if we bring Postman back up, now if I do a GET request on categories, I should just get back an array with the categories that I've created. Great. However, we actually want this to be, the writing of it, we want to be protected. You need to be logged in to be able to create categories. So we do have some auth middlewares. Let's see. Check auth header set user. Check auth header set user unauthorized. It's very verbose, but this is basically the middleware that we want to use, because this one will send back an unauthorized message if we attempt to create a category and we're not logged in. And I need to add another middleware that checks to see if the user is an admin also. So let's do that. So we need to bring in this middleware. We're going to bring that into we could go one of two routes. We could make the entire forum read-only for anyone, even if you're not logged in. And then you have to be logged in to be able to create topics and reply to topics. Or you have to be logged in for everything. I'm going to take a drink of water. You vote. Should this be a completely everyone can read everything forum, or should we make it so that you have to be logged in even to read anything on the forum? I'll be right back. Think about it. Yeah, +1 read for everyone is what some people are saying. I got the camera so you can see whenever I open up my Kinder Egg. James also votes everyone can read. I think that makes sense, and it's kind of like a Stack Overflow thing, because like anyone is allowed to see answers that people have created, but you have to be logged in to be able to reply or add comments. Oh, and definitely Andreas mentions like getting users should be protected if we're storing their email address. Yeah, and I think one thing I'll do is, because I haven't even created routes for getting users yet, you can only... Yeah, I mean, the only way to create a user is by doing the Google Oauth flow. But what we can do is when you get users, we don't send back any private information. Like, you only get usernames and images. Andre, thanks for subscribing. Appreciate it. Cool. I like it. Any more thoughts or comments in the chat? Because I'm about to open a Kinder Egg live on stream. Webcam preview. Okay, so I got this today. Let's first see what toy I got. Oh, that's the good stuff. Okay. Oh, it looks like a skateboard. Oh, sweet. That's awesome. Let's see what it does. Is this like a ramp? James is on the bus and like typing randomly. Oh yeah, it's like a little ramp you can jump over. It's got a nice little sticker. It's like graffiti style. Expanding into unboxing videos. Yeah, definitely. Welcome to the CJ Variety Hour. All right, let's see if I can do an ollie over this, and then we'll get back to coding. Oh, it has like this weird thing on it. I didn't even see that. Psh, board slide. Okay, that's enough of that. All right, so it's a skateboard. I'm excited about that. I've gotten some really weird toys in it recently, so. Okay, so read only for everything. That's fine. So that means that this route stays totally unprotected. Anyone can read all categories. But for creating a category, you need to be logged in, for one, but you also need to be an admin. So for one, I'm going to bring in the middleware for returning unauthorized if you're not logged in. So let's bring this in. And that's going to come from the middlewares. And so we'll set unauthorized here. So the way middleware works in Express is if you throw that middleware there, if the user is attempting to create a category and they're not logged in, it's just going to respond with 401 unauthorized. So now that we've added that, if I go back to Postman and like try to create another category, let's do post request against categories. Our body will be like the help channel. Ask for help here. Let's take a quick stretch. Tycho says fingerboards were all the rage back in the day. So in high school, no, junior, it was junior high. Tech decks, yeah, the little finger skateboards. I had friends that like perfected the art of skateboarding with fingers, like 360 flips and kick flips and stuff. Yeah. Okay, but because we added this middleware, now when we send this request, unauthorized. So we have protected this route. Right now, you must be logged in, or you at least must send a token with your request to create a category. So that's great. But let's also create a middleware that checks to see if the current user is an admin. Cool. So in our middlewares, we'll create another function. Is admin. Gets rec, res, and next. And really, we kind of want to do this. Like, if there is a user, then we're going to check to see if that user has the role ID 3. Otherwise, we're just going to say unauthorized, because if they're not an admin, we don't want to let them into this route. Barry says, nice sounding keyboard. What brand is it? Honestly, it's well, let me put my mouth. Okay. It is RGB. It like lights up when I hit it. It was like $50 on Amazon. I wanted to try out mechanical keyboards. It has like replaceable keys. I actually don't know what the brand is. But it's got cool LED patterns. So that one's like, you probably can't see it that well. This one does like I don't know if you can see it, but like the ASWD is lit up and nothing else is. There's like a cycling. One of my favorites though is the this one. So when you tap a key, it sparkles. Cool. Do I yeah, okay. I got sidetracked. So if there is a user, we're going to check to see if they're an admin. If not, then we are going to just immediately respond with unauthorized. So we'll say if user and user.role ID is equal to 3. Then we'll call next. So this means the user, if rec.user. So if there's a user on the request and the user on that request's role ID is 3, call next. And if we look back at how we seeded the database, we can see, well, actually we could do like table role. Yeah, so ID 3 is administrator, and if we do, let's turn on extended mode and do table users, the only user in the database right now has a role ID of 3. So if the current request has a user on it, and that user has a role ID of 3, they are an admin. So this is a simple little middleware that makes sure that the user is an admin. So we'll also export that here. And then in here, we're going to bring it in. And we also want this to be there. So this will first check to make sure that they're logged in, and then it will check to make sure that they are an admin. Cool. So yeah, that's great. Our backend is looking good. I believe those are all the routes we have right now and really all the protecting that we're going to do. Let's get to the front end. One thing I'll do real quick is just commit the code. So we're going to commit in our database code. We'll say sparkles add category table. Push that up. Links to the code are in the description as well, so you can take a look at the latest code for the DB. And then I'll push up this backend code that I've written so far. Whoa, what all have I done? Oh yeah, we added routes. We added a middleware. We refactored inserting a user. Cool. Sparkles. Add category, get all, and insert. Push that up. 16 people, 9 likes. The last one to hit the like button is a bad JavaScript programmer. Wait, like, meaning you're getting people to just keep clicking it so they're not the last one? Is that what you're saying? I'm gonna dip into my Kinder Egg. These are, I don't know if, like, people watching all around the world, this is an American Kinder Egg, which is literally just like liquid chocolate with like little balls inside of it. I lived in Germany for like 3 years and got legit Kinder Eggs, and they were my favorite. This is not a legit Kinder Egg. It's like the same kind of chocolate, but it's not original. It's good. It's good. Appreciate it, Rodrigo. Okay, we pushed that code up. Let's work on the client side now. So on the client, we do have an admin page. And yeah. So when you first log in, it redirects you to the forum page. And then if you try to go to the admin page, it checks to see if you're an admin. And so we do have an isAdmin action in the store. And this just checks the role ID of the user. Cool. So on the client side, we should be able to go to /admin and not get redirected. We don't. Cool. So the admin view is where we'll allow the admin to create categories. So that's the and why I created that middleware route. For this specific app, admins are the only ones that can create categories, because those are like the things on the main page, and then anyone that's logged in can create topics and replies. Yeah, and what Andreas is saying, the Kinder Eggs he's eaten have the toy inside the chocolate egg. Yeah, that's what I was used to when I lived in Germany. But these are, yeah, Kinder Joy. I don't know if you can see that. They're not Kinder Eggs. Sweet cream topped with cocoa wafer bites. So I know like real Kinder Eggs were banned in the US because they're like a choking hazard. This has the toy separated from the chocolate. So I don't know. Barry is saying, all this difference to Linux, but most developers would rather use Mac OS, the antithesis of open source. I like it. I really do. Like, I used an Ubuntu laptop for years. And when I started teaching full stack development, they used MacBooks at that school. So really just got used to it. Yeah. What more can I say? Okay. All right, so on the admin page is where we're actually going to allow the user to add categories. So let's do this. It does just say admin. When the page loads, let's show all of the categories. So I'm actually going to, let's create a component. Not just yet. We'll show all the categories here, and then we'll extract it out into a component. So we are using Bootstrap, I believe. If we look at our main, yeah, so we're using Bootswatch. Let's check out Bootswatch. We're using this one. I'm going to look for an element to use to show the categories. I think like, technically we could use like a list group. That would be nice. Yeah, I think that'll work. Oh, I mean, yeah, we could do list group with headings. So like the category title will be here, and then the description will be below it. So let's do something like this. So we are going to need this all to be in a single element. Don't do that. And, whoa. This is saying class active. We don't want to give it the class active just yet. Let's just see what this looks like on the admin page. Cool. I don't like that it says admin view. Let's call this community settings. And cool. So that's like dummy UI right there, but let's create an action in our store that will grab all of the categories. So on state, let's say categories is initially an empty array. And then we'll have an action to actually get the categories. So we'll say, let's call it load categories. And in here, we need to call our API. So I do have a file defined for where we can put API stuff. Right now we have isadmin. I don't think this is even being used anymore. Yeah, that's not even being used anymore. That's fine. I'm actually just going to get rid of it. But in this file is where I'm going to write a function to get all categories. So let's say export function get all categories. And this is going to do a fetch. We'll make this an async function. We'll say response is awaiting fetch of, we want the, let's call this base URL. We'll do base URL slash, well, so we have our base URL. Now let's say API URL is our base URL slash API slash v1. So that's our API URL. And so we want API URL slash categories. So that'll make the request there. And then categories will be response.json, and we'll await that. And really we can just return this. Cool. So we got this function. It's going to give us all categories. Let's call it inside of our store. So we're going to bring get all categories in here. And then when load categories gets called, we'll make this an async function. We will say categories is await get all categories. And then we're going to commit a mutation. We'll say set categories with the categories that we just got back from the API. So now we need this mutation set categories. So let's do it. And set categories takes in the state and the categories and just says state.categories equals categories. Whoa, whoa. Okay, so we have this load categories action. Let's call it from inside of our admin view. So we already have map actions, so we're going to grab isadmin, but we'll also grab load categories. And then we also want state from Vuex. So we're going to bring in map state as well. And for our computed, we're just going to say map state, and the thing we want are the categories. And when the admin component mounts, okay. So one thing I'm thinking is the admin component is not going to be the only component that needs categories. Like, we're going to have a main category view page as well. We're just having this admin component where you can create new categories. So technically, should we call load categories here? could call it elsewhere. We'll call it here for now. So if they're not an admin, let's go back to the forum. Otherwise, this .load categories. So that's going to make the request to the API. And then in our view, or our template, we're going to iterate over categories. So this thing here is where we will actually do the v4. We can get rid of this. So here's, we'll say v4 category in categories. I'm pronouncing it like I'm kind of doing that on purpose, category. And so we're repeating over the category in categories, and the key will be category.id. I apologize if that's getting on your nerves. Category. Barry in the chat is saying, so is Vuex the new framework of the day? I would not say so. Like, Vuex has been around since I think 2014 is when it first came out, and it picked up a lot of traction over last year because people are realizing how awesome it is. It's really easy to learn. There aren't a lot of concepts involved, and it just works. I am a big fan of Vuex. You're saying so far Vue is like C#, which is a big selling point. I'm not sure where I've seen that comparison, but I very much like it. Like, I did Angular 1x for a while, and the syntax is, or like in the directives built in, are very similar. But the way Vue works under the hood is a lot like React, which is a good selling point. Okay, so we're repeating over categories. Right here is where we want to show the category.title. And we're not going to show that for now. And then here is where we will show the description. Cool. So we log in, we go to the admin page. Let's see what happens. So, oh, it's a good error to get. John is asking for DB, we are using PG or Sequelize. We're using Postgres. And I'm using what do you call it? A library called Connects. So Sequelize is an ORM in that it basically allows you to define your models as objects, and it has the ability to like automatically create the database tables for you. With Connects, you have to manually create the tables, and then you can see in my queries, maybe this might be good. Our queries are pretty simple so far, but for this is like a select where statement with Connects. So from the users table, select all users where the role ID is 3. This essentially gets turned into a SQL statement and then executed against the database. Whereas something like Sequelize is more of higher level way of interacting with the database, where you almost never touch like SQL-like code. For larger apps, it makes sense to use something like an ORM. Rodolfo was asking, have you used TypeORM? I tried it out once on a morning tea stream. It seemed really cool. The only thing is their docs, I'll show it because this kind of makes me mad. In their docs, the express example is broken, and I made a pull request to fix it, and they haven't. And so anyone that uses Express that comes here and tries to use TypeORM, they're going to have issues. Because I had issues live on stream, and then I figured them out and I made a pull request. But like whoever made this is not familiar with how Express route handlers work. You can't just return a value. You have to actually do res.json. This is besides the point of TypeORM. It just made me mad that they haven't accepted my pull request yet, which is literally just fixing these docs. But it seems cool overall. I've used TypeScript a little bit, and yeah, I like it. It's cool. I'll say that. One of my preferred ORM for JavaScript is one called Objection.js. I'm not going to have complex enough relationships that I need something like this in the app that I'm building right now, but this thing is awesome. They have these eager loading and graph inserts and graph upserts, and it's pretty sweet. Where was I? I got really sidetracked. Oh no, I accidentally quit the browser. Where's my water? Oh, and Rodolfo is asking, is there any difference, or what about Joy? So Joy specifically is just a validation library. Did I close all of my browser windows? Jeez, okay. But I guess I'll show that real quick. So on my queries, I'm creating this schema. This is literally just an object validation schema. So when my server receives a request of something to insert into the database, we use this object validation to make sure that what they're sending us matches this specific schema. And then we simply just insert it into the database. With connects, inserts are super simple. As long as the object you're passing it has all of the required columns for that database, it automatically converts that into a SQL statement to insert that into the database. Tech deck. Oh, no worries. No need to be sorry, Rodolfo. You're all good. So Joy is validation library. TypoRM would be like validations and an object relational mapper on top of talking to a database. Whereas I'm using this simple validation library in conjunction with something like connects, where typically you have to do the validations yourself. Okay. I remember where I was now. Yes, I remember where I was. But one thing I'm going to do is if you go to the home page, instead of showing login with Google, we should actually, if you're logged in, you shouldn't see that. Let's see. Yeah, let's do this. So what we're doing right now, though, is in our store, we have our user. So we could bring this user into the home page, like just map it from store. And if it has a value, show like go to forum button. If it doesn't, show login with Google button. If we look at our app.view, yeah, so when the page loads, we are logging in. If there is a token in local storage, we're logging them in. Cool. So on the home page, let's bring in the user from the store. So I'm going to say import map state from Vuex. And then here on computed, we also want to grab the user from the store. And so now this component has access to the user. And so we'll say if not user, show the login button. And then if there is a user, we're going to say go to forum. And this can actually be a router link instead of an anchor tag. Let's just make this a little bit easier to see. So we don't need an href, but we can make this a router link, which is something built into View Router. And we can tell it that when you click it, we want to go to a specific route. In this case, we want to go to the forum route. I guess we're still going to forum and it doesn't exist. That's fine. We're going to create it eventually. But in here, we'll say to the route with the name forum. Actually, this is going to break now. Can we do this? Don't bind it. To forum. Go to forum. Yes, that works. Cool. So now when you visit the website, if you're already logged in, you don't see that login button. You just see go to forum. And now that I'm an admin, I can go here and we can get to what I was talking about probably 10 minutes ago. Missing required prop 2. Go to forum. Admin. Here we go. we need to add cores on our backend. That's the main issue right now. So we've been working on these things separately. Now they're actually making requests to each other. So we need to add the cores module on our backend. So let's do that. Let's go into the server folder. We'll do an npm install of cores. So we have cores. And then in our server side app.js, let's bring in cores. So here, cores, require cores. And then we'll use it right about here. So let's use it, well, use it before passport. It only really matters that we're using it before the actual API routes, which is what we're, where we need cores to make the request to. Right now we have it totally open. Later on, we can come back in and specify the actual client origin that should be specified there. But for now, it leaves it totally open. And if I refresh the page, it breaks. Hey, now we get categories. Cool. Why can't I load the admin page? Regardless. Cool. So now we see the categories here. Now we want like an add category button where we can add a category. So on the admin page, this shouldn't link anywhere. Actually, this should link to the category with that ID. Eventually, we'll update that. Go to the forum. Go to the admin page. Yeah, I think what I'll do is just like a little inline form because we only have 3 fields. I was thinking like, do we do a modal? Do we do a separate page? I think I'm just going to have a simple little form down at the bottom here that has title, description, image URL, add category. Let's do that. Just a second. Okay. All right, so let's make a simple little form. Let's go to Bootstrap to grab a simple little form. I'll say it like 3 more times. Simple little form. Components, forms, something like this, really. We do want like a text area for the description. Yeah, something like this. So we've got the list items there. Let's have a div. We'll have like a little h3 that says add category. We'll have a nice little form with no action. And this form will have a text area. This specifically is going to be for the description. And we'll call this description. And we also want an input for the title. And this is not going to be a text area. This is going to be an input. And let's see what we get. Cool. Let's give it some top margin just so it's pushed down a little bit. Built into Bootstrap, there's the Bootstrap 4 margin top 4. Pushes it down 4 ems. That's cool. I'm okay with that. Let me bring the chat back up. All right. See you later, Andreas. Yeah, I'm leaving on Saturday. So by morning tea time on Sunday, I should be live from New York. So be well. See you later. Okay. Title, description. Let's also add an input for image URL. And then we need a little button. Let's look at the Bootstrap buttons. Let's do a success button. Oh, sorry. The button type will be submit, because this will actually submit the form, and we'll say add category. What do we got? Whoa. Cool, nice little form. Let's hook it up. So I could put the data for this form in the store. I typically like to keep my state for forms like in the component itself. So I think I'll just do that. So on this component, it's going to have some data. We'll have the new category, which has a title that's an empty string, a description that's an empty string, and an image URL that is an empty string. So that's our new category. And for now, let's make all the title as required and the description as required. Now, honestly, don't feel like doing much validation, but we have our server-side validation, so even if they were to submit bogus info, the server would reject it. For whatever reason, I'm feeling lazy. I apologize, everyone. But so we have our form. Let's bind these inputs. So this title input will have a v model against new category.title, and the description will have a v model against new category.description, and then the input will have a v model of new category.image URL. Cool. And then when the form is submitted, so we'll say at submit, we want to prevent the default action and then call a function like add category. And we'll pass in new category. So add category will accept the category and send it to the server. So let's do this. We're going to define an action called add category in our store. So right here, we'll say add category. This accepts the category that you're adding. And then we'll do this. So we'll say category equals await. Let's call it create category. And this is going to be where we actually call our API. So create category, and when it's done, we'll just log it out. So create category, we want to bring in from our API. And then in our API file, we now need a function called create category. Hey, Paradise Blood, welcome to the stream. Create category. And this fetch is going to be a little bit trickier because we need it to be a post. So fetch this URL. The method is a post. This is also accepting the category. So the body of this request is going to be json.stringify the category. Whoa, not that. Category. And then we need to tell the server that we're sending it JSON. So we need to specify some headers. We want the content type to be application JSON. So that will send the request to the server to create the category. We'll get back the response, which should be the created category here. And then let's just push that category into the categories array. So let's do a commit of push category We'll pass in the category. And then we need a mutation called push category. Oh, we're overwriting. Let's call this new category. Cool. So this is going to be the thing that's passed in from the component. Then what gets returned from the API will be called category. And then we'll define a mutation that will just push it into the array. So here, push category gets our state, gets the category. It says state.categories.push category. Cool. So yeah, it makes the API request, it gets it back, puts it into the array, and because it puts it into the array, we should see it on the page. So now we need to make sure that we bring in add category from our actions. That should do it. Let's try it. So let's go to the admin page. We want to add a new category. We'll add the help category. We'll say ask for help and give help here. Rainbow. No image. Add category. 401 unauthorized. We never actually, so this is the first time we're actually testing that middleware that we wrote called isAdmin. Let's see what's happening. So when we did a post request to API v1 categories, we are getting a 401. Let's do some logging on the server side when we are attempting to create. So for, I know exactly why. We're not sending the token with the request from the client side. So we also need to do that. Hey, Brooks, welcome to the stream. Yeah, it has been a while. Welcome, welcome. So one thing we need to do is on the client side, we also need to pass in the authorization header, bearer, and then we need to throw in whatever is in local storage. So bearer, and then we're going to throw in local storage.token. So this actually sends the token along with this post request so the server can validate it and check that the user is an admin. That should do what we want. Let's try again. So we go to the admin page. We want a help category, ask for help, and give help here. Rainbow. Add category. We still got unauthorized. Oh, it's a validation error that we're getting. Rodrigo was about to say token, definitely. So that was one thing, but child image URL fails because image URL is not allowed to be empty. It is though. So let's look at the Joy docs because we actually do want we want image URL to be optional. So without makes it so that it's optional. We actually want to add that to our validation on the back end. So for the category schema, we can say without image URL because we do want image URL to be optional. Well, it's not an array. We can just pass multiple things. So without image URL. That should do it. All right. Invalid number of arguments expected 2. What? Let's double check that we're doing this right. Let's go to their docs directly, like on GitHub. API reference without. Forbids the presence of other keys whenever the specified key is present. No, I guess that's not exactly what we want to do. optional. I think that, so I saw optional keys. Schema.optional keys a.b c.d. Optional keys image URL. Will that work? Okay, the app restarted. Hey Carlos, nice streaming night. Yes, thank you. It's a nice night. I wasn't being contentious. Yes, it is a nice stream. No, but it's a nice night. Got my Kinder Egg. Got a skateboard. It's a good night. All right, moment of truth. Image URL fails because image URL is not allowed to be empty. But I've got optional keys. Let's see. Object.keys. We could do required keys with just, well, no, because those two are required. Rodrigo says, amaze, process one document and get answers like 15 seconds. This is taking me a while though. Typically I do use Command F. So like, what is the thing I want? Does it actually exist? I'm having some trouble here though. Marks the key as optional and will allow undefined values. Maybe I can just add optional right there, and then I don't need to do this. Let's see. So server restarted. Try it. No, child image URL fails because image URL is not allowed to be empty. Joy string allow null. That might work. Allow. I mean, I really feel like, oh, this would be under string. Does string have an optional? Yeah, string doesn't have an optional, that's why. Because right now I'm doing just dot optional. I do want to verify that when it does exist, it is a string. So I believe I want that. And so maybe we need to narrow our focus. So like, instead of looking all over the place, we need to look at string specifically. What can I do on a string? Inherits from any. So it should still have optional. I feel like I've done this before though. Joy string optional. Semicolon missing. I think it was the missing semicolon. Any other ideas? I guess I could do allow. I think the thing is, it's technically not null. I don't think it's like it's undefined because the object doesn't have it. Let's do a little bit more debugging. So we should be hitting the insert category. Let's just log. This might be a good thing, which we haven't done yet, is like inserting category. So what are we actually sending the server? Let's make sure that is what we expect. So if we do this, inserting, Oh, image URL is an empty string. So actually, I think I can do allow empty string. That's why. Yeah, and the reason it's an empty string is because on the client side, my model leaves it empty, so unless you type something in. That makes sense. Okay. The other thing though, and while I'm working on the validation, why not? We should validate that image URL is a URL, like has a protocol scheme. I think there's a URI validation. Yeah, .uri. So let's also do this. So allow the empty string, but if it does have a value, it must have HTTP or HTTPS at the beginning of it. Well, it must be a URI that begins with HTTP or HTTPS. Okay, let's see if this works. Add category. Can't set headers after they are sent. Oh, I know exactly why. So in our middleware for isAdmin, this, if the user exists and their role ID is 3, we want to just return here, because if we let the code continue, then it will always return 401 unauthorized. But we actually want this to just stop there and go on to allow the next request handler to happen. So actually, if we go back to the admin page, that worked. So we did add the help section. Let's just do one more test, because this should work the way we expect now. So when I hit that add category button, it should just pop up there. We'll do share work category. Share things you have been working on. Let's do a turtle. Add category. Yes! Whew, that was fun. Okay. So, well, I mean, at least we know that the routes actually are protected in a good way. So you have to be an admin. We know that's working for sure. Cool. I think that's all I wanted to do for adding categories. Let's look back at our Trello board. So an API route to create a category, only if you're an admin. An admin page on the client to add categories, which we have. An API route to get all categories. One last thing is show all categories on forum page. So anyone that goes to the forum page can see all of the categories, just like we had there. So this is where I'll actually refactor this into a component. So this here, this list of categories, let's put this in a component so that when I create on the forum page, we can just pull this component in and send the categories to it. So here's what I want to do. This right here, I want to be able to say category list, and we'll pass in categories as categories. And then in my components, I'll create a new file called category list scaffold. That will be our template. And we're just going to have some props. Categories. So we expect categories to be passed down to this component. Cool. So this page broke because we need to actually bring in that component. So let's do, because we're going to use this in multiple places, let's do a global component registration. So in our app.view, sorry, no, our main.js, we can register the category list component so that it can be used anywhere. So I think I can do this here. components, and then I'll require in a category list. So right about here, I'm going to import category list from components / category list. All right, that seems okay. And if we go to the admin page, hard refresh, that doesn't work. I think I can do view.use, or no, view.component category list with category list. That is a global component registration. There we go. Cool. So we have this nice category list component. Now let's create the forum page and bring this category list component into it. So in our views, let's create a new file, call it forum.view. And for now, it's just going to have the category list. And we'll bring the categories in from the store. So categories is categories. This will have a script. And here we'll have computed. And this will be map state. We want to bring in the categories. And then we'll bring in map state from Vuex. Cool. One thing I'll do though, so I mentioned this earlier, so and actually, yeah, so if I'm on the admin page and then I go to the forum page, let's see real quick though. Map state categories. Oh, I actually need to add the forum page. So I created the forum view. Now we need to actually, I put it in the router. So let's just do it right about there. Let's take a quick stretch. So we need to bring in the forum page. And we need a route for the forum. So /forum will be called forum and should load the forum component. So if I go to the forum, the categories don't load, which is why I was going to show before. So admin calls categories. So if I go back to forum, they're there. So one thing I want to do is we really should just get all the categories when the app loads. Because why not? I mean, like, if you're viewing the forum, you want to see what the categories are, right? Right. So here's what I'm going to do. In app.view, yeah, I'm just going to grab all the categories. Why not? So let's bring in, let's see what it was called. So in admin, we were doing load categories. Now I'm just going to do this at the top level. So now any component that brings that in from the store will already have all of the categories. So we're going to bring in load categories. And when this was mounted, we'll do this.load categories. Cool. So you go to the home page, categories were loaded. You go to the forum, you see the categories. Yay! Paradise Blood is asking, can you give me an advice on what kind of a project like this I can do to train with Vue.js? Because this seems too complicated to start with. Yeah, they're especially the fact that I have multiple views. So routing is a concept of itself. So this is routing. Basically, you have URLs mapped to components. And then I have components that have components inside of them. I would, I don't know like what you have done, but I would try to at least build a to-do app. That really demonstrates all of the core concepts of Vue.js without getting into like routing or nested components or Vuex. Another complex thing I'm doing here is managing all of my state in a single place using Vuex. Whereas if you're just getting started with Vue, I would not jump directly into Vuex. I would work strictly with data inside of your component. I'm trying to think of other good simple apps to work on as your first one. I don't know, what are some of the things that... Oh, you know what? I don't know if you've seen it, but I do have a video I made called the Vue Abstravaganza. And I made 3 different apps. Let me show that real quick. Yeah, I guess the interesting thing about Vue, though, is it's routes, but it's client-side routes. So, and those would be separate from your server-side routes. And I guess you'll notice in the URL that hash is there. That's because this actually isn't making a new request to the server. JavaScript is kicking in, is dynamically loading a new things in the center area. Yeah, Brooks is mentioning Reddit clone would be a good project. Let's look for it. Actually, if you go to my playlists in the Vue playlist, you'll definitely find it. Vue.js videos. This Vue.js extravaganza. So one thing, the first app I built was a score counter. So it just has an up and a down button. That's like the classic like first front end framework app. I then built a to-do app where you could add to-dos, you could mark them as done, you could delete them, you could mark them all as done. And then I built a Reddit clone. So building the Reddit clone actually showed like how to make an API request inside of Vue.js, and then just lots of the different features in Vue for like calling methods inside of your template. Check that video out. The code is also there too if you want to see the apps that I did build. Tycho says, yo dog, we heard you like Coding Garden, so we put Coding Garden inside of your Coding Garden. Let's see how many Coding Garden videos I can open up all at once. Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Something's weird. Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Tonight's episode, we are going to give an overview of state management, component hierarchy, and props with Vue.js. Now, in some of my past videos on Vue.js, they have been... Is that enough Coding Garden for you? Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm getting delusional. Okay, but check that video out. I'll link to it right now. Vue Native. Vue Native is available now. Maybe I haven't heard of Vue Native. I have heard of Native Script that you can use with Vue. Sorry, let me link. So that's the Vue.js playlist. That specifically is a link to this Vue.js extravaganza. I'm gonna Google Vue Native real quick because I've not heard of that. Vue Native. Quillhorst is asking, what would fertilizer be for Coding Garden? Yerba mate. I mean, if you've seen my my morning tea stream, or like a lot of other streams, I'm drinking yerba mate all the time, so that keeps me going. Crappy code is the fertilizer. I mean, I see where you're going with that because like it makes us grow. I don't know. Vue Native, the progressive JavaScript framework for cross-platform native mobile apps using JavaScript. Is this using native script though? Very interesting. I've never seen this before. I'm curious how popular it is. Vue native core. It's like 2,000 stars. Cool. Okay. I got very sidetracked. We saw lots of CJs. And let me see. I've been streaming close to 2 hours. I think here's what I'll do. Let's look at the Trello board to see how we're doing. I think this is good. Just real quick, like a style fix. So like on the forum page, let's put a section in here and give this a class of margin top 3. Just push it down a little bit. Cool. Cool. I think that's great. I think the last thing I'll do is deploy. So at least all you users out there in the world can just see this list of categories. Funny comments in the chat. Oh, Paradise Blood saying it uses TypeScript. That's interesting. And it is a React native killer. If you've heard of Vuex, that's a similar thing where you're actually using Vue.js, but it compiles down to native UI elements like React Native. And then there is NativeScript, which does a similar thing. Cool. So I think we're good on creating new categories. That's done. And then next time it'll be actual forum interaction. So like go into a specific category, add a new topic, and then we'll have replies and all that good stuff. Cool. So let's push the code up and then deploy it. One thing I'll do is I'll fix the linter errors before I do push this up. Okay, in home.view, line 9 exceeds the length. So line 9, this is way too long. Let's fix this. Actually, let's show the go to forum button all the time on the home page. And let's give this a class of button danger for the login button. So that way, oh, I killed it. Cool. But if I'm logged, I don't have a logout button yet, but I can clear all of local storage real quick. Let's clear site data. So now you see both of them. So that way, if you're not logged in, you can still click go to forum and see the categories. So that's cool. But then you can log in with Google, and it takes you to the forum. Ah, it's coming along. It's working. Okay. Let me fix my linter errors, and then I will deploy. And I would love for all of you out there to go look at the 3 categories that I created. Well, actually, this is on my local database. Quellhurst is asking, sounds like you have a mechanical keyboard. Does it have Mac keys? It doesn't, but any standard keyboard will still work on a Mac. The Windows key button works as command. Alt is option, control. So it still works. And I'm actually using a Windows computer, and a Mac computer at the same time. So it works out. Cool. All right, linter errors and then deploy. Stay focused. Okay. Admin.view line 14. The line is too long. Let's make it not too long. I mean, really, we need to do this with all of these. I have yet to find an HTML formatter that will do this with my element attributes. Put them all on a new line, nicely indented. I've seen some that have settings that say that they can do this, but I have not found a formatter that actually does it. Commit is defined but never used. Store line 47. that makes sense. So we actually don't need commit. Assignment to property of function parameter state. I am going to disable this linter rule because in Vuex you actually you do assign to parameters because your parameter is actually state. So in my package JSON under ESLint rules, I'm going to disable that rule. Oh, I don't want that actually. Stop. Stop. npm run lint. Missing file extension for Vue? I don't like that. I'm gonna turn that off. I don't want to add the file extension. Oh no! My Choco Ball! Gonna eat it anyways. Bob, welcome! Here before it's over. I'm almost done. Absolute imports should come before relative imports. Okay. I'm down with that. I mean, honestly though, these should all be @ instead of relative. In a Vue.js app, the @ sign is aliased to the source directory for imports. So it makes it so that like if you're like rearranging files, the imports will still work because they're all relative to the root, instead of being like a relative like go up one directory kind of thing. Okay, appnav. Yep, this line is way too long. Five-second rule, 3-second rule. There was definitely some carpet in that Choco Ball, but that's okay with me. One error found. Oh, no Linter error found. Yay! Okay, so quick stretch. Then we will deploy the front end. I'm trying to think. Last time, I think we deployed this last time to. Let's close that. Community. Yeah, community-forum.now.sh. Yeah, we deployed it last time. So deploy it again. I need to deploy the backend before I do this. Sorry, npm run build. Okay, so while the client is building, let's deploy the backend. It is talking, so I believe we deployed the backend to now, but our database is actually on Heroku. Yeah. So here's what we need to do. We do need to deploy this with now. I think this is it. So we need to deploy this looking for that Google API key. Cool. And then in our DB directory, this has Heroku in it. Okay, so we've already committed that here. If I push this up to Heroku, then I can run these latest migrations. Git push Heroku master. Okay, so we pushed that to Heroku. Now Heroku has the latest code for migrations. So I should be able to do Heroku run connects migrate latest. And that will create the category table in my database in the cloud. Oh. Here's the other thing, though. I deployed my backend, but I need... Yeah, I need a database URL, and it's just complaining about client ID right now. So in my server-side code, I do have the connects file, and it says process.env.database URL. Okay, so I need that. If you look at my env sample, actually, I need all of these things. Okay, I gotta add some secrets to now. Heroku has a free tier, so they allow like node apps. I think they allow like containerized apps, which can pretty much be any language. And they have a free tier that you have a certain number of hours of usage per month, and it goes to sleep when it hasn't been in use for a while. This other deployment tool I'm using now, it's free also, free for open source projects, and you can pay a little bit of money to get more features. Okay, so I need to add all of these keys to now. Now, secrets, add, we'll call this community, let's say CM Google client, and then I'm gonna hide my screen. Rodrigo's saying he's never deployed a database in his life. One thing I want to do, I'm going to have like a super clickbaity title, 101 ways to deploy your app. And I'll show like how to deploy a static app with Firebase, with Now, with Surge, with Amazon S3, like all the different ways to deploy a static app. And then I'll show like several different ways to deploy a backend app, and then several different ways to deploy a database to like imlab or Heroku or hosted on AWS. Definitely. All right, I'm going to hide my screen for a second. It's just me. Because I need to add all of these secrets to now, so that way when I deploy, my server-side code will have access to these different things. So I've added my Google Client ID. I'm going to add my Google secret. Quellhorst asks, am I using OBS to stream? I am. Okay, I have a lot of secrets that I have to add. Okay, secrets, add. I can't forget to add the database URL too. Whew, so much. I'll be back very soon. You'll see my screen very soon. Client redirect. Oh. And this thing is deployed here. So you're mentioning drag and drop deployment. If you look at zeit.co, zeit.co, or now.sh, they actually have a desktop tool for deploying your static site. You literally just drag and drop it. add cm client error. And I also need the database URL. True, it's not a command line interface, but the now tool itself is a CLI interface. But what you're asking is a visual CLI. Not sure. Okay, this is gonna be tricky. Let me close this. Let's go in here. Actually, I'm gonna make a deployment task just because this is gonna be so tedious to write out. Okay. Let's split that right. Okay. I will show my screen very soon. Secret. If this works on the first deploy go, I'm gonna be very excited. -E. Okay, I think I'm ready to go. All right, let me close all the sensitive things. Make sure you can't hack me easily, at least. Okay, here comes the screen. Let me just double check. Okay, I'm ready. Okay, so to deploy the server, this is what it's going to take. So my sample env file has all the different things that we need: the Google client ID, the Google client secret, the token secret, which is used for signing JSON web tokens, the client redirect, which is where it redirects to after OAuth is done, client error redirect, which is where it redirects after if there was an error in login, and then also if we check out our connects file, this is looking at a database URL whenever we're in production. So I think I actually need to add that too. So I'll do node.env is production. So the way this works is I added these secrets to now, like the secret values, and then I can reference them with the @ sign. So my client ID is stored as a secret. My client secret, my token secret. I ran the command to like store these secretly, and now whenever I deploy, I can access them with just the @ sign. And so this is the command I will need to run anytime I want to deploy the server. And then in my package JSON, I actually just made a deploy script that, oh, that's not it. I want all of this. So this deploy script, next time I can just run npm run deploy, and it'll automatically do that whole big command with all the different secrets and everything. So it's trying, it's starting it up. Cool. So let's alias it. Now alias, oh, not that. It tells where it got deployed. Yeah, so it got deployed to this URL, but I actually now want to alias it to community forum api.now.sh. Cool. And hopefully I can beat you to it. SSL off. Somehow cannot connect to the database. Let's do this. In our connects file, let's add, this is a Heroku thing, SSL equals true. So whenever it connects to it, it uses a secure connection. Let's see if that'll work. I'll have to redeploy. npm run deploy. Cool. Redirect URI mismatch. So I actually need to update in my Google console. Give me 1 second. Cool. Actually didn't have to change anything in the Google console. I was just tricking you so that you wouldn't try to log in first and become the admin. So we built our client. Let's go into the dist folder. And in here we can do now. And this is going to deploy our client to a different URL. Okay, and then we're going to alias this to community forum. All right, and now when we go here, we have this beautiful login with Google button. And if we click it, we get logged in and we get taken to the forum page. But there are no categories yet, so let's add some. If we go to the admin page, we can add some. So we'll add the announcements category, description. What's new? What's happening? Stay up to date. There's like a loudspeaker emoji. Yeah, this thing. Cool. Add the category. Boom! It's working. Help. ask for help or get help here. Rainbow. Add the category. Cool. And what's the last one? Share work. Share things you have been working on here. Lollipop. Cool. So if we go to now the forum page, we can see that. And anyone out there on the web, there's the link. Let me know if you can see the categories. And then if you log in, try to go to the admin page. See what happens. Yeah, you shouldn't be able to go to the admin page and you shouldn't be able to create categories. But if you can, we'll fix it next time. I'm going to clean up around here. And also, I'll push all of this code up. A lot of code changed, but let's push it up. Sparkles. Add admin page to client. Add cores to server. Show categories on forum page. Go. Cool. I'm actually gonna go to this link and log in with a different account over on this computer, just to double check. Cool. And on this account, if I try to go to the admin page, oh, it actually redirects me. Let's try to add something. It's not supposed to. Cool. So I can go, yeah, oh, you can't, Paradise Blood, you can't click anything yet. It's literally just a list of categories. But for whatever reason, you can go to the admin page. You still get an unauthorized if you try to create a category. Let me fix that real quick. So it should actually redirect you. So if we look at our client side, if we look at admin.view, when this is mounted, if you are not an admin, go to /forum. We really want like a navigation guard in our routes. Let's look at the store, this.isadmin. User.roleid equals 3. And let me double check. Yeah, so this user over here has a role ID of 1. So isadmin should actually be false. Doop, 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 doop. Oh well, I'm going to add that as a bug on the Trello board, and I'll fix it some other time. To do, redirect from admin page if not admin. Yeah, for whatever reason that's not working. All right, and actually I will throw all of this to deployed so we can create categories. On first login, I became an administrator. Users can sign up with Google. We set up the database, and we're technically... No, we actually did design the database, so that's deployed. We just have to actually create the tables as we go along. All right, it's been fun. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I honestly feel like I got more done in the past, 2 hours? Yeah, than I did in the entire 8-hour live stream last time. I feel like every time I decide to implement Auth, it just like drains me, and by the end of the stream, I just don't feel like doing anything else. But we got some basic features. You can at least see the categories. You can't add anything just yet, but coming very soon. That's pretty much it. Let me do this. Oh yeah, I don't have any upcoming live stream scheduled just yet because Saturday I am flying out to New York City. I do plan to stream on Sunday. I just don't know for sure if I'm gonna have a space to stream in just yet. So if you're on the Discord, I'll be communicating there. I'll let you know if and when I am gonna go live. But thanks for tuning in. Yeah, Andy, see you later. Thanks for tuning in. Rodrigo, you're very welcome. Paradise Blood, you're very welcome. Everyone else that tuned in, you're welcome. You're awesome. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. And here's this.